Excellent. Thanks so much for joining us. It's such a pleasure to be here in Los Angeles. My name is Shannon Harvey. I'm a publisher at Inventory Press together with Adam Michaels. And we are so thrilled that David Reinfurt is here live in person after his incredible tour of Ghent, Belgium last week. He's flown to LA to help present this new book. This is hot off the press. These are advanced copies available at table A15 if you're interested. And it's a follow-up to the much celebrated graphic design textbook that we published in 2019 called A New Program for Graphic Design. And David will be sharing a little bit about the history of that book and sort of where it's taken him and where it's been over the past 5 years. I can't believe it's been just over 5 years since we published that book. But we're so thrilled to have this new volume that really brings a multitude of voices into the conversation. So again, David will tell you more, but I'll just do a brief introduction of David, and then we'll take it away. So David Reinfurt is a designer and educator who introduced the study of graphic design at Princeton University, which, as you know, is a liberal arts college, so it's very interesting that it sort of found its way into that setting. As a founder of ORG, Dexter, Sinister, and the Serving Library, Reinfurt has been involved in several studios that have reimagined graphic design and publishing in the 21st century. He is the co-author of Muriel Cooper. This is from MIT Press in 2017. And as I mentioned, he's the author of A New Program for Graphic Design, which was in 2019. So without further ado, thank you, David.
Okay, this mic seems to not be on, maybe. Is it on?
It's on.
Okay.
Can you hear?
Yeah, kind of low. Okay. Better?
Yeah, it's just that one.
Better?
Yes.
Better.
Can Jason Fulford hear me? Okay. Anyway, thank you for coming. Thank you to David Sr. for letting me do this in the classroom. I've done things in the classroom for so many years, and it's always a nice place to do it. So I'm going to talk about this book right here, which is an all new, not quite sequel, but some kind of continuation of this book, which was called A New Program for Graphic Design. And in order to talk about the new book, I need to talk a little bit about the old book to set the scene for how it came into being. So, A New Program for Graphic Design was based on my teaching at Princeton University, which Shannon also mentioned. So in 2017, Inventory Press, Shannon and Adam approached me and thought that what I was teaching at Princeton might have some broader resonance elsewhere. And they wanted to do a book around it. I had just finished a book with MIT Press, and I was exhausted by the project of doing that. And so writing a book was not really, didn't seem like a very appealing option. So together we came up with a plan, which was instead of to write a book, we were gonna perform a book or speak a book. And so we moved the setting of the 3 classes I was currently teaching at Princeton University from New Jersey to Los Angeles, to Silver Lake, to what was at the time InfoCo and Inventory Press's offices. And we set up a space there, and for 3 days, I performed 1 class per day as a series of 6 45-minute slide lectures with juice and synthesizers in between. There were students conscripted to come from several schools and other like general audience members who might come for some part of this like endurance 3 days of me speaking to slides, which is a bit. The entire event was video recorded, as you can see here, and from those video recordings, the material was transcribed, and that became the basis of the book, which was then edited, adjusted to account for all of the redundancies that spoken text has, etc., to be made legible. I'm going to play this little excerpt. This is one of the recordings that began each of the days, and it's the same way in which the book begins. So I'll just play this, which was said before the 6 lectures at the beginning of each day. I should say one more thing. The setup in the office, in the studio office, was set up kind of like an exhibition and a bit like a carnival. As I mentioned, there were synthesizers and there was lots of kind of sideshow activities going on during during the slide lectures. So I'll play this beginning introduction for 1 second, for about 45 seconds. So this is an experiment. That's the first thing to know. And everybody here is part of this experiment. It's kind of maybe a harebrained idea to perform a book rather than writing a book. And so we came up with the premise that these 3 days would then, each one covers one course at Princeton, and they're being filmed, and that will be transcribed, and that forms the basis for a graphic design textbook. So what you hear in this room today is actually writing a book in the future. Okay. So that book was written, and that book was published, and that book came out in September of 2019. It was launched at the New York Art Book Fair in a classroom event, and there proceeded from that September 2019 kind of a number of book launches. This first one worked and sounded something like this, where it included there's a kind of slideshow running that included all the material from those lectures, and audience members were free to yell stop whenever they wanted to hear something more about one of the works in there. The launches continued. This one, I think on the right was in New York, and left was part of what happened in New Haven, Connecticut. And there were events. This was in London at Central St. Martin's. Anyway, it's just to say that there are kind of a lot of launch activities around the book in that fall of 2019. There were also exhibitions. This was an exhibition of the student work that came out of those classes. It was at Princeton University at the time. And then there was an exhibition and a set of performances in Milan for a book fair, the Sprint Art Milano book fair. This was the exhibition setup, which included a set of chairs where the recordings from those original 3 days in Los Angeles were playing on the screen, and also material from the book was included around like in these vitrines and some other various bits and pieces of things. I did a similar kind of launch talk there as well. There's one part that is idiosyncratic about this exhibition, which was just they also did a billboard, which is a strange thing. So in the exhibition site, they did a billboard, and we put just the original classroom setting, the setting here in Silver Lake on that billboard, which I kind of thought was a nice transposition of spaces. So here's that image there. So this was all leading up. This is in the fall of 2019, and the book was I suppose it was an unexpected hit. It was we reprinted soon after, I don't remember how long after the launch. Anyway, and the events kept on coming, and this was already the turn of January 2020, and by February 2020, I was all set up to go do another exhibition, kind of installation and talk at the Villa Medici in Rome, which is the French Academy in Rome. And it's really, it's a beautiful space, which is you see here. And I was going to set up like a big table that would be a kind of persistent exhibition and then do a talk in the space. So it was an exciting prospect. This was also February 20th, 2020. And of course we know, I had it all set up. This is in the studio, just had all the pieces like ready to go, sitting in the studio, and I was kind of worried, kind of hearing a bit about a novel coronavirus that was spreading in Italy at the time. And I debated whether I would travel there or not. It just wasn't clear, it wasn't clear to me what to do. And I should talk to another Inventory Press author, Jeffrey Schnapp, who we're going to see in some of the later slides. We're going to see in some of the later slides here today. And Jeffrey was set to go to Milan also at the same time, and he had canceled his trip, and he knew more about the setting than I did. And so I followed his lead and just, decided not to go. Hardly a big blow considering what was to come. 2 weeks later, New York City was in lockdown, as was the country. I walked out of my classroom on March 10th, 2020 for spring recess with an ambiguous plan to return in 2 weeks. That was the idea, spring break. We did not convene again in person until September 2021. In the intervening semesters, classes, yes? Yeah. Oh, I didn't, yeah, it was off. Because we're in the lockdown. So we did not reconvene again in person until September 2021. In the intervening semesters, classes were moved to a Zoom classroom, and I taught from my basement studio in New York, with students logging on from home, of course. I mean, I think we all know this experience quite all too well, from all over the world and from disparate time zones. And yet the courses have continued, and they're kind of better than I was expecting. I mean, the students really brought their full selves to the situation. It was pretty lovely, actually. As the global pandemic set in during the last half of spring 2020, it became increasingly obvious that my teaching also needed to change to adjust to this. It needed to be completely reconsidered for this new context. It was not only the technical and logistical differences between online instruction that made this necessary, is also the experience of a global tragedy, delivered in waves of resolute uncertainty. The pandemic was so much larger than any one of us, and the actions of any one individual paled in the face of a collective, concerted response. By the end of the semester, a social movement also sparked in part by the horrific murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis by police officers, also made it clear that my classes needed to change. That was just one register of it. This is a picture of a mural on Fulton Street in Bedford-Stuyvesant in New York City, which appeared about that time. I was just struck in teaching at that moment also with how relevant graphic design was in that online context, both in, say, for example, I was interested in the typography of the Black Lives Matter movement and how a kind of loose framework of all caps, black and yellow, sans serif type, but not necessarily a particular sans serif type or a particular setting, could help motivate that message and make it move, make it travel. And as well as, of course, like graphics that helped us understand exponential growth and what was happening during the spread of disease. And so it occurred to me that this was a particularly important time for what needed to be learned and talked about in graphic design. So a co-program for graphic design, the Yellow Book, extends the original with 3 new classes. Each one of them was completely reimagined and taught during the pandemic. Circulation is the first one. So the first chapter is a class called Circulation, which examines the distribution networks for graphic design, including electronic and conventional means. The second chapter is a class called Multiplicity, which was co-taught with Philip Ording, who is a professor of topology, a mathematics professor, and we had the nice opportunity to co-teach a class at Princeton that brought together graphic design and topology. Subjects we've been talking about together. So that class was completely done in together with Philip in an equal partnership, as was the chapter assembled from that. Research is the final class, and that was an advanced graphic design class, which cultivates an exploratory and expansive design process and investigates what the term design research has meant at different points in design history. So this is the beginning of the Circulation chapter. It begins with a story around that mural and around the graphics that attended the Black Lives Matter movement. But very much of the text of this chapter is taken from an article by Nicole Hannah-Jones writing in the New York Times Magazine. And the tone of the book works a lot like this. It's a lot less of my voice and much more of many other people's voices. Both in the things we were talking about, but also in the actual speaking in the class or beyond. So another talk in the first chapter was with Barbara Glauber, a designer based in New York, speaking about Corita Kent, the Los Angeles-based art teacher who perhaps you are familiar with. Or another essay and class visit was by Adam Pendleton, an artist based in New York, who was speaking about recycling of themes and graphics in his artworks. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the contents of the book later. Chapter 2, Multiplicity, this is a class co-taught with Philip Ording, where we tried to imagine what was common between approaches in graphic design and topology, which has to do with how you arrange things and how you can imagine spaces of difference within collections of slightly different objects. Here, for example, are snowflakes. Another lecture in that class was around Ray Eames and a problem in topology called the Bridges of Königsberg. Another visit in that class was from Talbot Auerbach, an artist based in New York. Talbot was speaking about Giuseppe Peano and a mathematic construction called a Peano curve, which is a space-filling curve. The third chapter is research, and it also included many other contributors and collaborators. This one happens to be my daughter in an act of pure nepotism, contributing a piece around postcards, which connects from the previous chapter and were actually sent by Philip Warding, the teacher, or another chapter around Enzo Mari and his ideas about design research, Italian designer, or the final chapter, which is around Virgil Abloh and his kind of always moving practice, which ended way too soon. The classes that comprise this book, as I said, were completely redesigned for online teaching. They also substantially multiply the number of voices in the classroom and include visiting designers joining from around the world via video. So I want to list the contributors, make sure I didn't leave out anyone. Contributors include Danielle Aubert, Adam Pendleton, Barbara Glauber, Talbot Auerbach, Philip Ording, Adam Michaels, and Shannon Harvey, who we have here today, on subjects including the Detroit Printing Co-op, Carita Kent, Giuseppe Peano, Marshall McLuhan, Sylvia Harris, and Virgil Abloh. So this book is, as I've said a couple of times, is not a sequel nor like a reconsideration of the first book. It's a completely new book. And it is really an extension, I think, of the first book. The two should add up to something more. This book is explicitly polyphonic, and its collective tone is fundamental to the premise of the book. The three new classes have many more voices in the classroom, and as a result, also on the page. The title "co" stands for a lot of different things, but I think prominently it stands for me as cooperation, which is slightly different than collaboration, I would suggest. Cooperators take more individual responsibility for an agency in the process. Collaboration might be a more equal and working towards a common goal. Cooperation is more like parallel play. People working towards a common goal, doing their own thing. And I am much more drawn to cooperation. Cooperators produce individually for the common good. A co-op is equal, and members agree to work towards its goals. Okay. So quite a few years ago now, I gave a talk about my work at the Walker Art Center, and I'm going to play a little bit of that. It was for the Insights Design Lecture Series. You're going to see me, younger. Yes? Oh, sorry. Okay, let's get rid of that, shall we? Let's go back here. Okay, so we're going way back in time. And anyway, so I gave a talk. The talk was called Towards an Intuitive Understanding of the Fourth Dimension, the Shape of Time. Catchy title. And I started off the talk trying to make a case about how I see my work as continuous, not discrete projects. And in fact, I began by apologizing for an email I took forever to return from the Walker Art Center. They were asking for some information about the talk, and they were asking about how this project followed this project, and I just said, I don't really see them as separate things. I see them as all one thing, which is a bit of an overstatement, but it was a rhetorical stand, but it's also what I think. I'm going to play this little bit. Maybe my previous self says it better than my current modeled self. I finally did send a response. It took quite a while, and I sent this following response, which is just I said, I'm really not sure how to respond as all the questions assume some sort of break in time, before and after. Although I do understand that things happen in an order, I typically can only make sense of it as one thing, continuous and connected. That last little bit, that continuous and connected, is borrowed from Marshall McLuhan from The Medium is a Massage, which we're going to hear about in a minute from Shannon and Adam. So in this lecture, I proceeded to share a series of projects and make the case that each project followed directly from a previous one. I continue to believe that this is fundamental to marking a path through the dispersed field of graphic design, so then it makes all kinds of sense to me that this book would continue the first book. From where it would continue from where the previous book ended, changing only what must be changed, which is always a working method I endorse. Like, don't rethink everything, only change what's not working. Like its predecessor, this volume is 256 pages. It's divided into 3 chapters corresponding to these 3 courses, like the first book, with text that has a casual quality of speech and is supplemented by inline illustrations. The design is nearly the same, with the addition of a serif body text that indicates when other speakers' voices appear in the text, which is speak over, it's fine. Okay, so in this time, maybe I'll turn it off. Now, instead of performing the book in order to produce it, like the first volume, this book has an inverted approach. This one is also organized around these 3 classes, but this time we didn't need to make the transcripts. These classes were taught remotely online, and so you record online in Zoom, and of course Zoom automatically generates transcripts. So the book was almost like automatically generated by the teaching of these classes. Of course, the text that comes out of that is a mess, and editor Eugenia Bell and Shannon and Adam and myself all made passes at improving it considerably. Anyway, the text that results is a roughly edited collage of these transcriptions. So everything that appears in the book was first spoken online in a Zoom classroom. Teaching that way had its advantages because the internet doesn't care where you are. I was able to invite guests that I wanted from wherever they were to join the classes virtually. Only a few of them make it into the book. It's just what needed to fit in the right places. But I had quite a few visitors come. This diverse community of cooperators produced lively classes, which have since been refined as we return to in-person teaching in a conventional classroom. And of course, I still leverage this situation. I did a crit a couple weeks ago where we were all on Zoom sitting in the classroom and the critics were joining from wherever they were in the world elsewhere. So of course, there are things to be learned from that situation. Okay, I'm just about at the end when Shannon and Adam will start. So why all this preamble about what's a rather old project? Isn't this supposed to be the introduction to a new book? It occurs to me that the most honest form of introduction is inevitably a continuation. I suppose I don't believe it's ever possible to start fresh. You're always conditioned what you and others have done before. So now, in what portends to be quite awkward, Shannon and Adam have graciously agreed to perform the text that is printed in the book. In other words, read the text that's printed in the book, which was transcribed from their original visit to class and edited highly after the fact. This also includes an introduction, which I will read about this. And so we're going to learn about the medium as a message in Marshall McLuhan, and I think they're going to come up there and sit, and we're going to drive the slideshow from up here. An inventory of effects with Shannon Harvey and Adam Michaels. Clap, clap, clap. Okay, now I begin reading. This is the first of a list of commonly asked questions and answers about Marshall McLuhan on marshallmcluhan.com. Why is the title of the book "The Medium is the Massage" and not "The Medium is the Message"? And the answer: actually, the title was a mistake. When the book came back from the typesetters, it had on the cover "Massage," as it still does. The title was supposed to have read "The Medium is the Message," but the typesetter had made an error. When Marshall saw the typo, he exclaimed, leave it alone, it's great, and right on target. The Medium is a Massage is a small paperback published in 1967 where graphic designer Quentin Fiore distilled the ideas of media theorist Marshall McLuhan for a broad audience. The front cover, site of the fruitful typo, looks like this that you see up there on screen. McLuhan, an academic, was already well known, but his ideas were not simple or necessarily easily digestible. The book describes itself as a look around to see what's happening. It's a kaleidoscope of interface situations. The small paperback became a bestseller with a devoted cult audience. It was the first in a series of books designed by Fiore and coordinated by Jerome Agel, which included titles by Buckminster Fuller and Carl Sagan. Almost 50 years later, this series was the subject of the Electric Information Age book, McLuhan, Agel, Fiore, and the experimental paperback by Jeffrey T. Schnapp and Adam Michaels. Number 3 in its own series, Inventory Books, edited and designed by Adam for Princeton Architectural Press. And to arrive full circle, the name of this series was borrowed from the subtitle of The Medium is the Massage, an inventory of effects. Inventory Books grew into a full-fledged publisher Inventory Press, which has designed, edited, and published books since 2014. And today, we are very lucky to be joined by its principals, Adam Michaels and Shannon Harvey. They will speak about combining their design practices with their publishing activities.
Thank you. This is very awkward. Let's do this. The focus today is Inventory Press. This is our publishing company. But we also run a design studio whose abbreviated name, Infoco, in long form is Inventory Form and Content. We established the studio in January 2017 after closing Project Projects, a long-standing studio that Adam founded in New York City in 2004 with Prem Krishnamurthy.
Yes, the first time that the word inventory was in the mix for our activities was in 2009, and the title of the book series, Inventory Books. I had pitched to Princeton Architectural Press that I would handle editorial direction and design for a set of experimental mass-market paperbacks, and PAP would handle all the mechanics of publishing. The third and final inventory book with PAP was the Electric Information Age book. It was essentially the meta entry in the series, providing a detailed history of the origins of the inventory book's approach, connecting it directly back to the legacy of McLuhan, Agel, and Fiore's avant-garde yet accessible paperbacks, as well as to the less celebrated efforts of many others. The medium is the Massage itself is an exceptional book, and we were interested in trying to understand how it came to be, what conditions allowed for such a high-level object to circulate widely in mass media channels. Quentin Fiore's work had been covered within graphic design discourse, but we could find very little about Jerome Agel, who produced that book, and numerous others, so Jeffrey and I started to look more into Agel. At the time, I was truly obsessed with this particular type of book, and I would regularly dig through bookstores' often massive paperback sections, trying to find anything that had unusual design aspects within an otherwise very standard object. We cataloged a number of these often haphazard discoveries in the Electric Information Age book. Here are a few of these titles on the shelf. All have a ready-made format. They were published to be cheap, like 95 cents or $1.95. We learned about paperback distribution and how this network was originally connected to newsstand and magazine distribution rather than bookstore distributors, which is why these titles would have showed up near, say, the cash register at a Walgreens. These cheap, small paperbacks circulated in parallel but separate systems from that of trade paperbacks and hardcover books. All right, let's see. Yeah, Jeffrey and I, we did a lot of work, lots of work.
I just want to point out one mechanism in the book. Sorry, I'm breaking the wall.
Oh.
You're breaking the wall.
So when Adam's looking up at the picture in the book, there's a little arrow that points you to look at the picture. So there's all kinds of these little tricks that are embedded to try to help you feel kind of engaged with the reading in the way that you would in a classroom, hopefully.
So yeah, I'll say one feature is that our book is the same format as the books that are covered within it, allowing us to weave together a montaged flow of full bleed spreads from our source materials. For example, here's a spread from our book that shows a one-to-one reproduction of an iconic visceral spread from the medium is the Massage, together with the following spread. The phrase reads, "The book is an extension of the eye." Here's another example showing a portion of our analysis of the contents of Buckminster Fuller's I Seem to Be a Verb. So the body text here, this is in our book, incorporates details of what's being discussed. For example, the font Futura is cited, and just that word is said in that font. Handwritten scribbles are treated in a similar manner, etc. Yeah, I'm going to have to skip a little bit. Okay, the medium is the Massage also led to the creation of an LP of the same name by McLuhan, Fiore, and Agel with the music producer John Simon. It's a sound collage built upon the foundation of McLuhan reading excerpts of the book amidst the repeated effect of turning a radio or TV dial from station to station, hitting upon a range of music and sound effects. Not to mention the parrot, who pops in regularly to squawk out the book title. It's not the most listenable of records. In any case, we can only conclude that we too should produce a record as an extension of our book. The result, the Electric Information Age album, includes samples from that McLuhan record, new music that I wrote along with Daniel Perlin at his studio in Brooklyn, and narration by Jeffrey Schnapp. And I suppose we should say that the last copies of this LP are available here. That's right, here at the Los Angeles Art Book Fair, the Inventory Press table at the $10 discount.
Amazing.
That's right. That's not in the book. That's additional information. So we pressed the record, and then we're unexpectedly invited to play live shows in Milan and in the Geodesic Dome located in the courtyard at PS1 in New York. We recruited Shannon to join up on keyboards for the live band.
diagnoses and anatomizes the contemporary individual.
I can't believe we did that.
That's Jeffrey Schnapp.
87.
Not just one night, 2 nights in the lawn.
Book rock. That's the genre.
Your neighborhood, your job, your government, your planet.
This is a minute and a half, but it's good.
Extension of some human faculty, psychic or physical. The wheel is an extension of the foot.
In the letter that sought
The book
McLuhan's
is an
approval
extension
for
of
the
eye.
project,
Clothing is an
Angel's
extension of
pitch
skin.
was that the LP is to be designed for young people. It is designed to be a 40-minute interface. It is designed to be heard again and again and again and again and again and again, like a pop record.
The way we perceive our own bodies. When these ratios change, men change.
Book rock.
Book rock.
We
It's
try to
heavy
have
from time
fun.
to time.
Yeah, we try.
All right. So after that, we felt like we needed a container for the book and the album, and we started talking with our good friend designer Mary Ping, who runs a fashion label called Sloan City Wins the Race, about designing a bag together that would be about formats. At the time, there was quite a bit of anxiety about what the Kindle and iPad were going to do to traditional book publishing. So in addition to the paperback and LP pockets, the bag has pockets based on the sizes of e-reading devices of that time, and we ended up with an Albers-esque composition of cascading pockets, which happen to be useful for things other than books too. The bag ended up being a surprise hit, and we've produced maybe 1,000 of them now in a variety of colorways. Maybe I'll jump ahead. Yeah, do you want to jump to the top of the next page?
Sure.
Oh.
In 2018, we designed the U.S. Pavilion at the 2018 Venice Architecture Biennale. We did the exhibition design, a complex website, and there was also a distributed system of essays online done in collaboration with eFlux. There was a paperback book that was produced as a catalog. There was initially no budget for a catalog, but we managed to secure a little bit of funding to publish the book. The curators were fans of the inventory book's paperbacks, and they suggested we make something in that spirit and format. The book we made became a document that will last much longer than the limited time span of that year's Venice Biennale and circulates as an object, allowing those who couldn't visit Venice access the exhibition's ideas. We also recently produced, this is in the past, but at that moment, we had recently produced a paperback with actor and director Jordan Peele. This was on his film Get Out. Our book was directly inspired by a series of 1960s paperbacks around films, which was also a key subject of the Electric Information Age book. Jordan Peele has a production studio that we've now done several projects with called Monkey Paw Productions. And they wanted to reframe Get Out with an emphasis on its screenplay, which had just won an Academy Award. We worked with Monkey Paw and also Tanana Reeve-Du, who's a film scholar here at UCLA. She wanted to position the film within the realm of Black horror. We were also able to sort of get them the framing that they wanted. This is where I wish we had a chance to edit a little bit more. It's really hard to read your words that were spoken aloud and then printed and then we lost something. Okay, anyways.
Sounds great.
Thanks. As a tangible and definitive record of the film, it's also been useful in classrooms, which was a big motivation for the project. And the form of the book has also helped that film to have an even further reaching impact by providing the ability to analyze the film's text more immediately. And in the spirit of those 1960s paperbacks, there's a lot of filmic sequences and immersive moments, and at the end of the book is a set of deleted scenes and an alternate ending. Jordan was extremely generous with his time and provided in-depth annotations of the screenplay and deleted scenes. And those annotations then appear in the book as endnotes, which offers further insights into what he was thinking about in writing and making the film.
You got a line there, David.
Okay. Oh, yes. And finishing up now with one final project, which closes the circulation loop Adam and Shannon have been describing rather definitely.
Try and stick to the text here. So for some years, I wanted to develop more titles where graphic design was the explicit subject matter. Based on what I knew of David's teaching at Princeton, it seemed like they would be relevant. It would be relevant to a larger audience if translated in a compelling way into book form. Once published, the course ideas could travel to all kinds of different places to be read by all sorts of people. David was enthusiastic about the idea, but wary of writing the book. Instead, we discussed the workaround. Rather than sitting down to solitarily write, David could instead speak the book into existence in a public setting, with us then transcribing and adapting what was said, an excitingly social way to make the book. At the time, Shannon and I were renting the late architect Richard Neutra's former studio in Silver Lake here in LA. That space has a communal area used for public events and exhibitions and seemed perfect. And there was a shared Buckminster Fuller reference that was inspirational. Everything I Know is a 42-hour lecture that Buckminster Fuller delivered and recorded on a kind of talk show stage set in 1975. It was somewhat crudely video documented, with the result including weird juxtapositions of Bucky with the galaxy, or small sculptural mathematical models, and so on. We thought to take that spirit and bring it to the communal open area of our office space. So we organized a 3-day event, 1 day for each of David's 3 courses. He would speak through an entire course in a given day. The 3-day event divided up into 6 45-minute lectures. We invited students from the various art schools out here, and we spread the word as far as we could. We found sponsorships from schools, a design organization, a chair company, a coffee place, and even a vegan donut shop. People from within schools and outside the academic realm showed up, and we hosted a considerable audience for each of the 3 days. We provided a warm, welcoming, fun environment with synthesizers and musical interludes between lectures, a reading room, juices, and so on. The whole thing felt like a cross between a classroom and a kind of anarchic festival. There's even a theme song I made as I was learning to use a particular Moog synthesizer. It's short, just 16 steps on a sequencer, is played over and over and over and over and over again, but always in different tempos or transposed or processed differently based on reading the mood of the room.
These many, many variations played during the 15-minute breaks between lectures. It also turned out that Ross Harris, the friend of a friend cameraman that we hired, was very interesting. He'd been a child actor in the 70s and a noise musician in the 1990s. He brought in his synthesizer. Our friend Jeremiah Chu brought an analog video synthesizer. Anyway, it was just this very open environment. There was also an exhibition showing work made by David's students. And overall, it was a really nice transposition of a classroom environment with an unusual cast of characters that came together to create a very energetic learning space.
I wanted to infuse the production of the eventual book with the energy and the feeling of the event. So everything was fully documented on video, and the footage was transcribed, and the editing process began. This ended up being arduous. I think it was something like 12 or 13 rounds between the editor, Eugenia Bell, David, and me, each taking turns editing the text. We then placed the images in the book to flow in the same manner in which David was flipping through the slideshow. The result is a pretty strange graphic design textbook, and that strangeness within a conventional category was deliberate. The book is based around 3 courses: typography, gestalt, and interface. The class here today, circulation, is not in the book. So that gets confused, because this is me talking in David's circulation class. But there's a pretty good chance it will appear in a future sequel. We've also just released a digital version of the original book as an ebook, which contains the video footage from the event as an archive. We're really excited to have been able to do this multimodal release. There may even be a new record coming out in the future. We'll see.
Foreshadowing there.
All right, but yeah, that's our chapter.
That's it. I think we're about at time, and maybe at the limits of your patience as well. Thank you for reading that. That was nice. I suppose, well, the book is available downstairs at Inventory Press's table. Go buy it. Yep.
David, will you do signings?
Sure.
Okay.
Do I have to sign my
With
name?
enthusiasm.
Can I sign somebody else's name?
No.
All right.
Do what you gotta do.
Yeah, I can do what I can do. Okay. So anyway, it's downstairs at Inventory Press's table, and that's what we have to share. Thank you for coming.